accessing them, but it's probably worth mentioning why did you go down that pathway and what's the difference there?
So we are permitting data holders to charge what we understood were to be small fees for accessing data. We heard quite quickly and quite loudly that the fees that we had come up with were not small and were problematic, and we are currently working through that.
I'm going to shift to Dermot and Jason. And I was really interested in this market-led versus regulatory approach, and then the transitioning between the two and what would look like. That would look like, obviously, there's a little bit of legacy left over from that market-led approach, but one of the key things with CDR is that balancing of being able to innovate, but also the compliance side of it, and what that balance looks like to make sure that both sides are, I guess, working so we can get the outcomes that we need. What are your thoughts on that switch from market-led to regulatory, and especially with innovating and complying, given you're both on that side of things?
Happy to go first.
Sure. So the first piece is the market-driven piece meant that all the participants were involved from the get-go. So the outcomes were set. Everybody had this desire to hit particular deliverables, right? It's a case we want this to be usable and we want all of those pieces to go with it. The downside of it was that the responsible party for that, which was Payments New Zealand, didn't have any teeth to enforce it, right? So they produced this fantastic standard. In fact, in the time that CDR came to being and was delivered, we've had 3 major versions, 6 minor versions of those pieces, which are substantial changes as a standard, but realistically only one of them has gone live, and even then in an optional way with the providers in that space. And so to Glenn's point, mandating that the 4 participate is fantastic. You have assurance now about when and what will be delivered. The hard part is, and you'll have found that here, with 130 data holders live, when you're building a service that you're going to be able to connect and you're going to be able to consume and you're going to be able to interact. You don't have that assurance on the other side. You can only say 80% of the market will be available, and even when it is available, they have the option of recouping costs, which is an interesting perspective when it comes to data interactions. Payments is always an interesting one when it comes to paying, because people pay for these things often with their service providers. There's card fees that might be regulated in or out in certain places and those types of pieces. But when it comes to data, I don't know what. But when it comes to data, it's unusual to have that level of fee. So the way we look at it is, what might cost 5 cents to one of our customers to service their customer on this side could cost $10.05 on the New Zealand side, which, as you can imagine, is a very expensive approach if you're going to be offering consumer-based interactions and those things. So that's the optionality is a challenge, and then the pay-to-play has been a challenge. But I think where the legislation is going now, that migration from the bank-driven piece, which I like to think of as a new motorway being built. It's designed to be a 5-lane motorway. It's going between 2 major cities. It's going to be fantastic, but what we have right now is 1 lane, a hell of a lot of traffic cones, and a toll being set at the beginning, right? And it's a case of multiple tolls, yeah. And the idea is, you start paying now and we promise we'll finish it, right? And the challenge we have there is, we've had 7+ years of it not being done, so the confidence isn't there that if we start paying now that it will actually turn out. And so we're excited about the idea that there's going to be a change, there's going to be some level of mandated outcomes for those pieces. And ideally, from our perspective, if it became a full 5 lanes, that would be fantastic. And if we can have more, and we can bring all the banks in, it would be even better, because I've seen the value that CDR has done here, and I'd love to be able to have that same impact on the New Zealand side, which realistically has a market the size of Sydney,
How about you, Jason? What do you think from your perspective?
I think Dermot's really nailed it there. I think one thing I'd like to add is that when it's a market-led, the consumer in the CDR tends to be left behind because the incentives are not aligned with the consumer in this day and age. banking really is a utility in anything other than name, really. And everyone deserves the right to their data and the right to make decisions. And a pay-to-play model really starts to drive that wedge in between the people who have and the people who have not. The reason I moved to New Zealand years ago, and I think it's the same for most of us who did that, who emigrated there, is that I saw it as truly one of the last true egalitarian places in the world to live. And it was without a sense of disappointment when it was proposed that this would be the most expensive country in the world for people to partake in open banking. Now, to the government's credit, they have listened, and there's a lot to take on in a very short amount of time when it comes to a very complex thing like APIs, and for that I'm most grateful. So I think that, being the regulation coming in certainly puts the focus back on ensuring that the consumer is at the heart of the CDR, and beyond that, that we don't stifle innovation for companies that have great ideas and they deserve a right to succeed on merit and not based on how much you can afford to pay in order to access the scheme, or who you might know if you're being forced to have these bilateral negotiations with the banks. And in that regard, we wanted for this to be a good news story for Australia. Yes, there's a lot to work on here, but there's a lot that we look to Australia for in terms of inspiration and what we've done very well here.
It's actually a really good segue